The night was quiet, except for the soft hum of the wind through the broken walls of the alien city. Ethan moved carefully between the ruins, his boots crunching on bits of glass and metal. The moonlight was faint, shining down on tall, twisted towers that had been abandoned for years. He carried a small light in his hand. Scanning the shadows for anything he could salvage, this place was dangerous. But sometimes the ruins hid valuable things, munitions, tools, even alien tech. Ethan had learned how to move quietly, how to listen, and how to stay out of trouble. But tonight, something felt different. The air was colder than usual, and the silence seemed heavy. He stopped when he heard a sound so faint he almost thought he imagined it. It was a voice, weak and trembling, carried to him by the wind. It wasn't in any language he knew. At first, just a soft whisper of syllables. Then, in a broken accent, he heard two words that chilled him to the bone. Help me. Ethan turned toward the sound, moving slowly. The ruins here were darker, the moonlight blocked by the remains of a huge stone wall. He stepped over fallen beams, careful not to make noise. The voice came again, closer now, fragile like it would vanish any second. He followed it until he saw movement in the shadows, something small, hunched and shaking. At first, he thought it was just another scavenger. But as he drew closer, the figure lifted its head, and he froze. Her skin was pale, almost white, with a faint bluish glow under the moonlight. Her hair hung around her face in tangled strands. And her eyes glowed faint red. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He had seen drawings of her kind in old warning posters. A vampire alien, one of the last. A predator that survived by drinking the blood and life force of others. The girl swayed unsteadily, her thin arms trembling as she tried to push herself up. Then she collapsed to her knees with a weak gasp. When she looked up at him, her fangs caught the light. I need blood, she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Please, or I die. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to back away. Everyone knew her kind was dangerous. They could drain you dry in seconds. He took a step back, unsure if this was some kind of trap, but there was no strength in her movements. Her lips were cracked, her breathing shallow. She was dying. For a moment, he thought about leaving. It wasn't his problem, but something in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't just hunger, it was fear, and something else. Desperation. She tried to turn away from him, her hands digging weakly into the dirt. I don't want to kill, she muttered, as if ashamed. Ethan stood there, torn. He had no blood packs, no medical supplies that could help her, and he knew if she didn't feed, she wouldn't last much longer. She would die here, in the cold ruins, alone. The wind picked up, blowing dust across the broken ground. Her head hung low, her body shaking more violently. Every breath she took sounded like a struggle. Ethan took a slow step forward. He didn't know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was stubbornness, but he couldn't just watch her die. When he reached her, she tried to speak, but her voice cracked. One drop, she whispered, barely able to look at him. One drop will save me. Ethan crouched down, his light falling across her face. Up close, he could see how thin she was, how her skin had lost its glow. Her eyes flickered weakly, like a dying fire. For a long moment, he didn't move. The stories about her kind ran through his head once they tasted your blood. They never forgot it. They would hunt you, follow you across worlds, bound to the memory of the taste. It was a dangerous choice, maybe even a death sentence. But right now, she wasn't a monster. She was just someone about to die. Ethan took a deep breath and extended his wrist toward her. If I do this, he said firmly, you stop when I tell you to. She blinked at him, her lips parting in shock. No one offers blood willingly, she said, as if she couldn't believe it. "Then I guess you've met the wrong human," he replied, his voice steady. For a moment, she didn't move, just stared at him with wide eyes. Then, slowly, she leaned forward, her fangs trembling just inches from his skin. Her breath was warm, shaky, as if she were afraid of what might happen next. "Why?" she whispered. Ethan met her gaze and answered simply, "Because I'm not going to let you die." Her lips trembled as they hovered over his wrist. Ethan could feel her breath even, hesitant, as if she was fighting her own instincts. Her fangs almost touched his skin, but then she froze, her eyes darting up to his eye. "Can't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "If I take too much, you die." Ethan didn't move his arm. He had seen death before on battlefields, in plague-struck colonies, and in the eyes of people who had nothing left. This was different. This was someone who could live if he acted now. "If you don't drink," he said quietly, "you won't make it to the next sunrise." Her gaze flickered with fear and confusion. "No human has ever offered," she murmured. "They run. They fight. They kill us if they can." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Maybe I'm not like other humans," he said, his voice low but firm. "You're starving, not hunting." "I can see the difference." Her hands, pale and trembling, rose slowly, almost touching his wrist, then stopping. It was like she was afraid to break something fragile. "I swore," she said under her breath, "I would never feed again." Ethan tilted his head. "Then why are you here? Why ask me for blood?" Her lips pressed together, and for a moment she didn't answer. Then she looked down at the ground, her voice almost too soft to hear. "Because dying alone is worse than breaking my oath." The words hit him harder than he expected. Ethan shifted his weight, feeling the cold bite of the night air. The ruins around them seemed even quieter now. As if holding its breath, he sighed. "All right," he said finally. But on one condition. Her eyes lifted, a faint flicker of light returning to them. "What condition?" she asked warily. "You stop when I say stop," Ethan told her, his tone unshakable. "No tricks, no games, you keep your word. If you can't promise that, we're done here." She stared at him for a long time, like she was trying to see through his skin and read his soul. Finally, she nodded, once, slowly. "I promise." Ethan held his wrist out again. For a second, she just looked at it like it was something unreal. Her throat moved as she swallowed, the hunger in her eyes growing sharper, but her hands still shook as she took his arm gently, almost carefully. Her touch was cold but light. "You really mean this?" she asked again, almost like she wanted him to change his mind. "I don't offer twice," he replied. Something passed over her face, a mix of awe and disbelief. Then, with a shaky breath, she leaned forward. Her fangs brushed his skin, and she hesitated again, but this time she didn't pull back. Her lips pressed lightly against his wrist. There was a sharp sting, quick and precise. Ethan sucked in a breath but didn't flinch. A warmth spread from the bite, mixed with a strange pull that made his head feel lighter. She drank slowly, almost painfully slow, as if she was forcing herself to control it. He watched her eyes, glowing faintly brighter with each swallow. Her grip on his arm was firm but not crushing. He could feel her fight her own hunger, holding back. When he spoke enough, she stopped instantly, pulling away, her lips wet with crimson. Her breathing ragged, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and stared at him. "You?" she said softly, almost in wonder. "You kept your word." "And I kept mine." Ethan nodded, flexing his wrist where two small marks were already closing. "You said you'd stop," he said, "and you did." She looked almost confused by his tone, as if she expected him to be angry or afraid. Instead, he stood there, calm. Her voice was quiet when she spoke next. "You don't understand human," she said. "By giving me your blood, You've bound yourself to me and my people's oldest law. Ethan frowned. And what law is that? Her glowing eyes locked onto his. The law of the life bond, she said. It means, whether you like it or not, you are mine now. Ethan didn't fully understand what she meant by life bond. He only knew that his head felt light, his wrist tingled, and the girl. The vampire alien looked far less like death than she had a moment ago. Her eyes had a brighter glow now. Faint but steady, and her breathing was calmer. She held herself straighter, but there was still something in her gaze. Restraint, you didn't take much, Ethan said, flexing his fingers. Most of your kind would have drained me without thinking. Her lips twitched like she wanted to smile, but didn't. That's because I'm not most of my kind, she replied quietly. I took only what I needed. And nothing more. Her voice was steadier now, and it carried a strange softness. Almost like she was speaking to someone she didn't want to scare away. Ethan studied her for a moment, her pale skin, her sharp yet delicate features. The way her fangs peeked slightly even when she closed her mouth. He couldn't tell if she was dangerous or simply desperate. Maybe both. What happens now? He asked. You've got your strength back, so you can walk. She lowered her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. Then she looked at him again, her tone serious. Now. I keep my promise. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What promise? The life bond, she said, like it should have been obvious. My people's law says if someone offers blood willingly, they become part of us. We owe them protection until death. And sometimes even beyond it. Ethan let out a slow breath that sounds like a pretty heavy deal for one drop of blood. It is, she said, her voice quiet but unshakable. In our history, such an act is sacred. It means trust where there should be fear. It means we're bound. You and I, her words settled between them like the weight of stone. Ethan felt the night air press colder against his skin. I didn't agree to that, he said. Though his tone wasn't as firm as he wanted it to be, she tilted her head slightly. A faint smirk ghosting across her lips. No one ever does. The wind whistled through the broken buildings, carrying the distant sound of metal clattering against stone. Ethan's instincts prickled someone. Or something was nearby. The girl's expression shifted instantly. Her posture sharpening, her glowing eyes scanning the darkness. They've found me, she whispered, her voice low and tense. Who? Ethan asked, though he already guessed the answer. The ones who destroyed my clan, she said, her jaw tightening. They've been hunting me for months. And now they will hunt you too. Ethan almost cursed under his breath. He had been in bad situations before, but this one was new. Saving a stranger was one thing. Becoming the target of her enemies was another. Still, he didn't step back. You can walk, Kay asked. Yes, she said, her voice steadier now, but I can't fight yet. Not without more. Her eyes flickered briefly to his wrist, and he caught the look. Not happening, he said. She gave the smallest nod, as if she had expected that answer. Then we run, she whispered, somewhere beyond the ruins. A deep mechanical hum began to grow louder. Ethan didn't need to ask Inomi ships. Closing in, he glanced at her. What's your name? Lyria, she said. All right, Lyria, he replied. Let's see if we can both make it out of here alive. She gave him a strange look, then a mix of surprise and something else. Respect. Maybe you saved my life tonight, she said softly. Now it's my turn to save yours. Asterisk, the night air grew sharper as the hum of enemy engines echoed across the ruins. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to move. Lyria didn't run. She stood still, her glowing eyes fixed on the shadows between the crumbling towers. They're coming fast, she said, her voice tight. They'll be here in minutes. Ethan checked his gear light pack, knife, and the small plasma pistol with half a charge. Not much for a fight, but he'd survived worse. then we don't give them the chance," he said, motioning for her to follow. They slipped into a narrow alley. The walls cracked and covered in alien markings, long faded by time. As they moved, Ethan kept glancing back at her, even weak. She moved with an unnatural grace, her steps silent on the broken ground. It reminded him she wasn't human, and yet, she walked behind him like she trusted him to lead, after several turns through the maze of rubble. They stopped under the remains of a collapsed bridge. Lyria leaned against the wall, her breath steady, but her eyes still scanning the darkness. "You should know something," she said suddenly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "This bond between Usids, not just a promise, it's law, written into my people's oldest traditions. You offered your blood freely, that makes you my protector. And me yours." Ethan frowned. "Protector? I thought you were the one who needed saving." Her lips curved slightly, but there was no humor in it. "You saved me tonight. Yes, but the life bond doesn't end when the danger does. If you fall, I must fall with you. If someone comes for you, I must stand in their way. It is a chain. One neither of us can break." Her voice carried a strange weight. Ethan realized she wasn't speaking in metaphor, she meant it. It was binding in her culture, maybe even in her biology. "That sounds like trouble for both of us," he said. "It is," she replied simply. "But it also means that now your enemies are mine, and mine are yours." Before he could respond, a sharp metallic screech echoed from above. Ethan's head snapped up hover drones, dropping into the ruins, their red scanning beams cutting through the darkness. Lyria's eyes narrowed. "They've sent hunters," she whispered. Ethan pulled his pistol. "Guess we move faster." They darted through another set of passageways, Ethan leading Lyria close behind. The sound of thrusters and metal claws scraping stone grew louder. The hunters weren't just following, they were herding them, pushing them deeper into the ruins. Ethan cursed under his breath. "They're steering us somewhere." He said yes, Lyria agreed, her voice low, toward the landing site. "So they can surround us." They stopped inside a hollowed-out building, its roof torn open to the night sky. Moonlight spilled over Lyria's face, and Ethan noticed her watching him closely. "You're not afraid," she said, almost like it was a puzzle she couldn't solve. "Most humans would have left me to die." Ethan gave a small shrug. "Fear's not useful right now," Kay said. "I'll deal with it later." She stared at him for a moment longer, then stepped closer. "Ethan," she said quietly, "if they capture you, they'll use you against me. I won't let that happen." He met her eyes. "Then you'd better not let them catch either of us." A faint smile touched her lips, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. From the distance came the low rumble of something larger than drone ships landing. Lyria's expression hardened. "They've brought soldiers," she said. "They will not stop until I'm dead or taken." Ethan tightened his grip on the pistol. "Then we keep moving." She stepped forward, her cold hand brushing against his arm. "Whatever happens," she said, her voice a soft vow, "I am bound to you now. If we live, I live with you. If we die, I die with you." From above, a beam of red light swept across the ruins, and the hunt began in earnest. The first drone spotted them before Ethan could move. A sharp beam of red light cut across the cracked floor, locking on to Lyria's pale figure. An alarm shrieked through the ruins, bouncing off broken walls like the howl of a wounded beast. "They know exactly where we are," Ethan muttered, grabbing her arm. "We run, now." Lyria didn't argue, even weakened. She moved quickly, her bare feet silent against the stone behind them. The whir of engines grew louder as more drones poured into the alleyways. They weren't just chasing, they were driving them, pushing them toward the open ground near the old landing zone. Ethan's mind raced. He had been hunted before by raiders, by mercenaries, but these machines were different. precise, relentless, and guided by something intelligent. He spotted a collapsed market stall ahead and ducked behind it. Motioning for Lyria to stay low, a drone hovered past, scanning the air. Ethan pulled a small metal disc from his belt pouch. Portable EMP charge. He thumbed the switch, counted to 3, and rolled it across the dirt. The blast was silent, but the effect was instant. The drone's lights died, and it crashed into the rubble with a metallic groan that buys us a minute. Ethan whispered, but Lyria was staring at him, her eyes wide. "You fight like a soldier," she said quietly. "I've been one," he answered. But that was a long time ago. Before she could say more, the air shook with the heavy stomp of boots. Alien soldiers, tall and armored, appeared at the far end of the street. Weapons drawn, their armor was black and red, hot, marked with the sigil of the clan that destroyed her people. Lyria's body went rigid, hot, her fangs flashing for just a second. Ethan saw it pure hatred, deep and burning, but she kept her voice. "Steady, they will kill you first." "To break me," she said. "Not today," Ethan replied. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a side tunnel, ducking under a slab of fallen stone. The tunnel was narrow and damp, the walls lined with alien roots and old metal pipes. The sound of the soldiers faded slightly, replaced by the slow drip of water from above. But just as Ethan thought they had slipped away, a shadow moved ahead, another soldier, waiting. He lunged forward, grabbing Ethan by the collar and slamming him into the wall. The weapon in the alien's other hand pressed cold against his throat. Lyria froze, her hands curling into claws. The soldier spoke in a harsh, alien tongue, his eyes locked on hers. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. It was a threat. "Lyria," Ethan said quietly, "don't." Too late, she moved faster than his eyes could follow. She was on the soldier, her fangs flashing, her hands struck like steel. Twisting his weapon away before he could react, she didn't drink from him. But she slammed him into the wall with a strength that didn't match her thin frame. The soldier crumpled, unconscious. Ethan stared at her, breathing hard. "Thought you said you couldn't fight." "I said I couldn't fight for long," she corrected, her voice cold but trembling at the edges. "That doesn't mean I'll let them take you." They pressed on through the tunnel, emerging into the lower levels of the ruins. Dim blue light from cracks in the ceiling gave the space a ghostly glow. It was quieter here, but not for long. The hunters would find them again. Lyria touched the wall, breathing slowly. "You've already changed my fate, human," she said softly. "Now, I will change yours." Before Ethan could ask what she meant, a low, mechanical growl rolled through the space. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. The growl grew louder until the floor beneath them began to vibrate. Ethan knew that sound. It wasn't a drone. It wasn't a soldier. It was something worse, a heavy hunter beast, bred for one purpose: chasing prey through tight spaces. "Move," Ethan said, his voice sharp. Lyria was already moving, her senses clearly tuned to the danger. They ran through the lower tunnels, their footsteps echoing against the damp walls. Behind them came the thunder of claws on stone. Scraping closer with every second, they burst into a wider chamber. Dim lights spilling from cracks above, Ethan spotted an exit across the room, but before they could reach it, another figure dropped from the ceiling, an alien soldier in full armor blocking the path. The hunter beast's growl turned into a roar. Closing in from behind, they were trapped. The soldier leveled his weapon at Ethan first. "Stay down, human," he barked in his harsh alien tongue. Ethan raised his hand slowly, buying time. But the soldier didn't aim for Lyria. He kept his weapon on Ethan's chest. Ethan understood the strategy: instantly kill him and Lyria. "Would break, run," Ethan told her under his breath. Her reply was ice cold. "No." The hunter beast lunged from the tunnel behind, massive jaws opening. The soldier fired a shot toward Ethan. Lyria moved before the blast even reached him. She was a blur of pale light and shadow, her body slamming into the soldier hard enough to knock him back. The shot went wide, searing the stone wall instead of Ethan's chest. The beast lunged at them both, but Lyria spun. Pulling Ethan down and out of its path, the monster crashed into the wall. Snapping its jaws with bone-breaking force, Ethan scrambled up. But Lyria didn't retreat, she went forward. Her movements were wild yet precise, fueled by something. More than hunger, she struck the beast's neck with both hands. Her claws digging in, it roared and thrashed, but she held on, her strength shocking even herself. "Go," she shouted at Ethan. "Not without you." He yelled back, firing his pistol into the soldier who was struggling to stand. The blast hit center mass. Dropping the armored figure again, the beast twisted, throwing Lyria against the floor. She cried out, pain flashing across her face. Ethan's heart lurched without thinking. He charged. Slamming the butt of his pistol into the creature's eye, it bellowed, pulling back just enough for Lyria to roll free. She was on her feet in a second, blood running down her temple butt. Eyes burning bright, the beast turned toward Ethan. But this time, she moved faster. She leaped onto its back, fangs bared, and bit deep into the thick muscle at its neck. The roar that followed shook the entire chamber. The beast staggered, then fell heavily to the ground. Unmoving, Ethan rushed to her side. She was breathing hard, blood at the corner of her mouth. But she was standing. "You're hurt," he said, reaching for her. "It's nothing," she replied. Though her voice was weaker, her eyes met his. And there was no trace of her earlier coldness. "You saved me in the ruins," she said softly. "I won't forget that. Ever." He shook his head. "Lyria, you could have run. Why didn't you?" She took a slow breath. "Because the bond isn't just a word, Ethan. It's a truth. If you die, I die." Somewhere above, the sound of engines roared to life, more soldiers arriving. They didn't have time to rest. Ethan tightened his grip on his pistol. "Then we get out of here." Lyria gave a small nod, her eyes fierce despite the pain. "Together," she said. The ruins fell silent again, only after they had put miles between themselves and the landing site. Ethan's lungs burned with every breath. But he didn't slow down until they reached the shelter of a half-collapsed tower. They stepped inside, the walls blocking out the wind and the distant hum of engines. Lyria leaned against the wall, her pale skin still streaked with dirt and blood. For the first time since he met her, her shoulders seemed to relax. "You kept me alive tonight," she said quietly, her voice carrying a strange mix of gratitude and disbelief. Ethan shrugged, trying to make light of it. "Guess I'm full of bad decisions." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "You don't understand, human. No one in the galaxy would have done what you did, offered their blood to my kind. Fought beside me, risked everything for me." Her voice lowered, almost trembling. "You changed my fate." Ethan sat down on a piece of broken stone, his pistol still resting across his knees. "You said that before," he said. She nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on him. "And I meant it," she replied, "in my people's eyes. You are not just a human now. You are bound to me, not as prey, not as a servant, but as a protector. And as the one I will protect for as long as I breathe." Her words carried a weight he couldn't ignore. He thought about the moment in the ruins, the pale, dying girl asking for one drop of blood. He hadn't known it then, but that choice had tied them together in a way neither of them could undo. "So what happens now?" he asked. She took a slow step toward him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Now," she said, "you have a choice. I can break the bond with the old ways. It will hurt us both, but you will be free. Or—" she paused, her voice softer now, "you can keep it, and we face the galaxy together." Ethan leaned back. Letting the silence stretch for a moment, he thought of the soldiers, the beast, the drones, every danger that came with knowing her. But he also thought of how she had leaped between him and death more than once. He thought of her promise, of the way she had looked at him when she said together, he stood, meeting her gaze. "If I saved you once," he said slowly, "I'll keep saving you, and if you protect me once, you'd better keep doing it." A faint, almost human smile touched her lips. "Then we have an agreement," she said. Outside, the night sky stretched wide and endless. Above the ruins, the stars burned bright. Two figures stepped out from the shadows, one human, one vampire alien walking side by side. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And in that quiet, unspoken space between them, a promise was sealed that no law, no army, and no fate could ever break.